Welcome, Captain Moto here. Thanks for dropping in. Hey, I'm no expert. I'm just a guy explaining stuff. Let's dive in. Thanks for dropping into part 2. In part 1, we talked about decibels and level meters. Now, in this section, we're going to talk about gain and gain staging. We've got these gain controls everywhere. Before we start adjusting gain at any point in the process, we need to keep in mind what our goal is, and that is, no matter if it's at the preamp level or once it gets into the DAW and we do something to adjust the gain, or we use the faders to adjust the output, we're all aiming for one objective, and that is to get a good quality output on the final main outputs. That is a strong signal, but yet never exceeds 0 dBFS, which would cause clipping. So let's always keep our eye on that goal. Now, the very first gain stage, or step, where we have the opportunity to adjust the gain is at the preamp level. Typically, that's built into your audio interface, and yours may look something like this, where you have a dial to adjust the amount of gain. And then you will also have some sort of light indicator, an LED or something, to indicate whether the signal is strong or peaking out when it hits red. So start there. You always want to avoid going in the red. Here's what mine looks like. It's important to remember you want to look at that gain adjustment every time you start a new recording. That could be affected by, obviously, the volume of the source you're recording, but also, let's say in a singer situation, are you close to the mic or far away? Are you recording a guitar? Are you playing it loud or quiet, or all those variables? So look at that input gain every single time you start a recording. Make sure you're never going into the red. Now, sometimes you've got a software app that comes with your interface where you can dive in there and do more precise gain adjustments. You'll have to look at your own manual for the equipment you have. Here's what mine looks like. I've got a whole lot of inputs. I think I got 16 or 24 or something inputs, so I've got a lot of stuff going on. But for each of those input channels, I have the opportunity here in this software to adjust the gain. My interface does not have a dial on the front. The only way I adjust the input gain is through that software view that I'm showing now. Now, it's not critical to have that sort of precise control. However, if you have it, learn how to use it. Otherwise, just watch the meter or the lights on your interface to make sure you are never going into the red and distorting the incoming signal. That's gain stage number 1. So to do that properly, you need to do a sound check every time you start a new recording with whatever source you're recording. So I recommend that when you're doing your sound check, you're selecting a portion of the song that is going to be at the highest volume. Let's just say, for instance, a vocalist, that might be the chorus. So do your sound check with the vocalist, perhaps singing the chorus, which is the loudest part. So that's it. If you get this first gain stage right, we can move on to the next gain stage. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate how I set up the first gain stage using this guitar. It's a small-bodied acoustic guitar. I'm miking it with a small diaphragm condenser microphone. I'm going to position that about 8 to 10 inches away from the fretboard, aimed at about the 14th fret. Behind me, I've got some absorption panels to both sides, and in front of me I have more absorption, and I've got a cloud above me in the studio space that helps dampen some of the room reflections. So that's the setup. And what I have done is, although here in my rack I have a number of pieces of outboard gear, including several outboard preamps, I'm not using those in this instance. This is my interface here, and I'm using a built-in preamp in that interface. So that's what I'm going to do. And what I've done is I've gone into the software to adjust the gain in the interface to make sure that I have a good solid level. And I just plucked around a little bit. I tried to hit some louder points, and that's it. Now we'll see what happens when we bring this into the DAW. Okay, here we go. We are now in the DAW, and what I've done is set up a session where we're going to record this guitar. Here's the track we've set up, and if I play, we're not getting anything, we're not showing anything happening because this track is not armed. Let's arm it. Okay, we see how that works. But at this juncture, we're not worried about recording anything. What we want to do at this gain stage is we want to see what the signal looks like that left the audio interface and is now coming into the DAW. So how do we do that? We go here and we select Show Inputs. Bammo. Remember, I said I got a whole bunch of inputs. There they are. I'm going to skinny this view down so we only look at the one that I'm recording on, this guy right here. And what we're going to do is we want to see what that level looks like. But these meters are kind of small, so we're going to make them taller. I'm going to stretch it as high as I can. We don't need to worry about the timeline or the track because we're not recording anything right now. We'll bring that way up here. And now we have a much better view of this meter. This is in dB full scale, 0 at the top. And let's see what's happening. Not bad. Now what I did was, just before you got here, I used this dial at the top to adjust. I'm going to reset it to 0. Okay. Now let's see. Let me do a little sound check with this guitar. Whoa! We are really peaking out. Now remember, it's not happening back at the interface. We set the input there right, but here it's pretty hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to dial it back. Let's see. That doesn't look too bad. We're peaking out about at -4. I think we could cut it back a little bit. Let's try it again. Yeah, so our average is here. We're peaking out somewhere, I don't know, 5 or 6, -5 or 6 dB FS. That's pretty good. So we could move on if we wanted to. However, we can try something else. Remember earlier in the video, I talked about the various kinds of meters. This one is showing dB FS, full scale, in the digital world. But some people like to use the VU meter because, I don't know, it's more appealing to look at and sometimes it's a little easier to read. So here's what I did. I went over here to the browser and I brought this VU meter in on this input. So I dropped the VU meter here. This is not on the channel. It's here on the input. And we're going to open that up, and that's what it looks like. So what you want to do, first of all, is you want to make sure that this scale is set to 18. Why? Remember, there's no relevance between dB FS and dBVU. They're completely different animals, but we can interpret what's happening here. If we set this to minus 18, that means that when this VU meter hits 0, it represents minus 18 dBFS. Or, in the analog world, plus 4 dBU. I know, we're back to all the craziness of conversion, but what you want to do is set this to 18. That means 0 here equals minus 18 here, which is a good, solid, safe spot to be recording in. So let's do a little test here. We see this bouncing past 0. That's fine. We can go past 0 in the analog world. It adds a little saturation and maybe some harmonics, but we never want to go past 0 in the digital world. What we get is distortion called clipping. We don't want it. So we're doing fine. We're going over 0 here. That's okay. We have a good strong signal. Now we are ready to go to the next stage when we begin recording. So let's go there. Before we begin recording, I just want to backtrack for a moment and demonstrate something. Here we are again in the DAW. As you can see, I have no track. I have no track created. And the only thing that's open here is, again, that input. So let me stretch that out so we can look at it again. Remember, this is where we set the levels earlier for that particular input in my interface. And what I want to demonstrate now is, let me slide this open and give you a peek at some of the other inputs I have on that interface. I've got a lot of open microphones and other inputs, but I want to bring your attention to something in particular. This very first one is the live mic, which I intend to now use to record the acoustic guitar. We have that set at the appropriate level. Here's some other microphones and other inputs that we won't be using. But I'm going to be quiet for a minute, and I'm going to bring your attention to this one right here. I'm going to stop talking. And what I'm pointing out there is, on that particular input, the source that I have going into it is generating some system noise, electronic noise of some sort. Let's look at it again. I'll be quiet. Now the one right next to it is a live mic, and it's picking up a little bit of the room sound. So you do see some sound there. So let me be quiet again. You can see if I snap my fingers, those live mics light up. But this one here, this mic is not live. It's going into a processor and then a microphone, and the mic is not activated. So everything we see here is noise in the system. Now the reason I point that out, if you recall back earlier when I was talking about why the analog world required a pretty high gain level, was so that the recording was much higher than the noise level in the system, and that made it a much more usable piece of audio. So I'll be quiet again. Look at everything else. Look at the first two. Look at everything else. When I stop talking, you'll see there's practically no noise. But this one is generating some sort of electrical noise in the system. Don't know why, whatever it is. But it's coming in there, let's see, at 53, 54, minus 53 or 54 decibels. That's not a lot. And if we record something there, chances are that little bit of noise won't disturb us. However, some other piece of equipment may register a higher noise floor, and perhaps this little bit at minus 53, 54 may in fact do something that we don't want in a recording. So whenever you have a high noise level in the system, my recommendation would be to set your recording level a little higher. Instead of shooting for that minus 18, maybe you want to shoot for a minus 12 or a minus 10 if you can get away with it, because the more space you have between this noise floor and whatever it is you're recording, like this, the more space you have between this and this, the higher quality your recording will be. Now, when I be quiet and I scroll this back, you'll see that on this particular microphone, we have practically no noise. So when I stop talking, it completely fades away. All right, we've got everything all set. Now we're going to start recording. Okay, we're just about ready to start recording. And I want to demonstrate something that I mentioned way earlier in the video. Do you recall when I said all of the faders in this digital mixer only control output? They don't control input. So let's demonstrate that. Let me arm this track. This is the microphone that I'm going to use to record the guitar. But I'll mute the guitar and it'll pick up my voice, and you can see the level fluctuating here as I speak. Okay, that's wonderful. Now I'm going to bring your attention to watch 2 meters. Watch this, watch the level here, and then watch the level here, way out here on the main out. Right now they should be just about the same. Whatever is coming in here is being sent right there without any change. Now, watch what happens to this level as I slide this meter up and down in the record mode. As long as I have this armed, we're in the record mode. And watch what happens as I slide this up and down. Slide it down, slide it down, slide it up, slide it up, slide it down, down, up, up. Absolutely nothing happens. Doesn't change this level. Watch again. I'll just keep talking and you'll see that the level really is not affected by the slider. Okay? I'll zero that out. Now I'm going to bring your attention way over here to the right side. Look at the main out and watch what happens with the same behavior. I'm speaking at a relatively constant level, and watch what happens when I adjust this fader here. Watch what happens way over on the right side with the main out. As I keep talking and talking and talking, look at that. It drops way down. As I dial it up, it goes way up, goes way up, goes way down. So there you have it. You can see that demonstrates that all of the meters, or I should say all of the faders inside this digital mixer only control output. Now watch what happens when I deactivate, disarm the track for recording. Watch what happens to this scale here. Watch, it'll change. See that? Let me put it back. And I'll do it again. Watch these numbers. Here, while we're armed for record, it goes from minus, I don't know, infinity or minus 60. Little numbers, I can't read it. Here, let me stretch this out a little bit so it's a little bit bigger. Okay, so watch this again. Here it goes from minus 72 up to plus 10. Then I go to the record mode, and it goes from minus 60 to 0, but yet there's room above 0. So a couple of things are happening here. The scale changes when we stop recording and we go into the mixing and balancing mode. And when we're in the record mode, this again is dB full scale, which will cause clipping anytime we go over 0. But as you can see, there's room above 0. Why is that? Well, the answer is this, I believe, is unique to Studio One. Even though clipping occurs in the digital world anytime you exceed 0 dBFS, because of the technology called 32-bit float, which Studio One deploys, it will actually allow you to record higher than 0 dBFS without clipping. Sounds like a good thing. But my recommendation is don't do that. If you clip here, if you go over 0 here, even though it doesn't clip, you are very likely to cause clipping here. Because anything over 0 has the potential to cause clipping, or it will cause clipping, except Studio One allows you to go above that because they're using this 32-bit float technology. Wonderful. I say ignore that. Never let your recording here on your track exceed 0 dBFS. Okay? All right, now we're going to start recording. Alrighty, well, I guess that was good enough to do this demonstration. So now that we have an event captured here, what are we going to do with it? Where is the next level of gain staging? Where does that come in? Let's just do a brief recap. The first stage was back at the interface, adjusted the input. The next gain stage was when that interface sent a signal into the DAW. Remember, we did that over here. Okay. Now we've recorded something, and we need to make sure that this is consistent with the general principle of having a good solid signal, not exceeding the gain so we have clipping, and the audio works with all future steps along the mixing process. So let's take a look at this, and just visually, let's go back and you won't be able to hear this, but I'm just going to go back here and play a little bit of this. Let's see. I want to look at these meters and see where we're at. Not too bad. Not too bad. We're in a good solid place here. However, let me back that up. One observation, we see that we have a fairly consistent recording level here. We've got a couple of peaks, but out here it really gets loud. I'll address what we can do with that if we want to. But if we wanted at all to cut or boost this event, what we can do now is a couple of things. We can go up here to this event and we can increase it or decrease it, but I don't think that that's particularly what we want to do today or at this juncture. What we're going to do is we're going to go here to this wrench icon, open that up, go down here and where it says Input Controls. We're going to click on that. What happened? It added a gain control here at the top of this track. Now what we can do is add or subtract gain without affecting the size, the visual size of this event. So let's just say, for instance, we want to add a couple dB of gain. Let's see. We're going to add there almost, well, here, I'll type it in. 2. We had 2 dB of gain. All right, wonderful. Now let's play this. Let's add a little more gain here, see what happens. There we go. We can see what's happening. This level has increased. All right, so now we're up to plus 4 dB of gain. Wonderful. Is that where we want it to be? Let's assume we're okay. And we're going to start our mixing process. However, we look out here and we see that we've got a particularly louder section back here. So what we can do there is right click on that, select gain envelope, click on that. Now anywhere in this event we can select a spot and create an increase or decrease, or if we go up here, notice the cursor changes from arrow to this, we can drag this whole thing up or down. So what we're going to do here, and we can do that multiple times, we're just going to go out to this section here, click on both sides of it, go up here where the control icon changes. We're going to drag that down a little bit. We don't have to look at any meters or anything. We can just look at the visual effect and see that now this portion is roughly aligned in gain with the rest of it. It will be easier now to mix this without going in and adding any compression or anything else. So now this track is ready to go. So let's see what we might do with it. Let's just say, for instance, we wanted to add an EQ. All right, so we go down here. We find, where is it? Where is the stinking EQ? Where the hell did it go? I lost it. Reverb? No, we don't want to add. Here we go. We're going to add an EQ to that. So, without getting too scientific, let's see if there's a default for acoustic guitar. Instrument, guitar. Here we go. Clear acoustic. Now look at all the boosts and cuts that this preset put in here. I want to remind you, every time we boost something in the EQ or cut something in the EQ, we are either boosting or cutting the volume. All right? And we want to make sure that we maintain a good gain level. So it's a good idea to engage the auto gain here. What is that going to do? Let's play this little piece of audio. And we see here's the input level, here's the output level. That's what we want. We want the input to be equal to the output. Let's turn that off, see what happens. Let me back up a little bit. We'll do it again. It's close. Let's do something radical. Let's boost a lot of stuff just for demonstration. So if I boost a lot of stuff, we can see here's the input. It was good and solid where we want it. But by making these changes, what happened was we caused a clipping on the output, which we don't want. So if we made some radical changes, we should go here and engage the auto gain. So our changes will take effect, even though these are crazy radical. We always want to make sure that we have the input equal to the output. All right, without going too much further in depth, that's an EQ. Let's say we want to add another effect. Let's just say we want to put in here a, let's just say here, let's just say, let's look for something here. Channel strip, no. Let's say we want to add a compressor. Same thing. Anytime we deploy a compressor, what we're doing is we're cutting or adding to the gain of that event. So if we were to add a compressor or any subsequent effect, we always want to make sure that what we're doing is proper gain staging. We want the input to be equal to the output so we never clip. All right. So that is gain stage number 3, where we did this. And here, where we use the auto gain here, that was gain stage number 4. I think you've got the idea. There are multiple places at which you can apply the gain, and at every one of those stages, you want to make sure that you have a good solid level that's never exceeding the clipping level, which is 0 dBFS. Let's stop there. Alrighty, let's explore that just a little further. Sorry for wasting your time hunting through these plugins before. I'll be cognizant of that this time. What I've done here is I added a gain meter to this track, which I often do because it's just easier to see. They're bigger and you can stretch them out so they're really visible. So if I play this track, you can see where we're at. We're peaking out here in a safe level, and we're averaging out here at pretty much to target. We're below 12, 24. We're probably about 18 dB is what we're seeing. Let me put that on there. Okay. So we can see what that looks like. That's a nice big meter. Okay. Now, what I also did is went over here and grabbed this fat channel. I put it on here, and I put this fat channel compressor in here. Now, the reason I chose this one is this is an emulation of an analog compressor. And the reason I picked that is, let's go way back. Remember when I said that in the analog world, we needed 0 dB 0 dB VU on the VU meter, because that was a nice solid signal that all of the effects, the analog effects in the console and outboard stuff, really needed to work at an optimal level. All right, so 0 dB VU is equal to minus 18 dBFS. Remember that? So that's where we're at. We're right about minus dBFS. So if we put in any kind of effect in that track, if it's emulating an analog effect, there's a high probability that it's designed to expect a minus 18 dBs level to work properly. Now, this happens to be one that comes as built in with Studio One, but if you're using third-party plugins, oftentimes those are emulating old analog devices, and it's important to feed that device with a good solid signal at 18 dBFS. So let's turn this thing on. Let's see what's happening. So before we do anything else, it looks like it's doing okay. We're a little shy of 0. I'm going to dial up the gain a bit. Now look what happened. We peaked. We're getting way up here. So what I'm going to do is now open up. What I'm going to do is open this up, a second meter. And that one, let me stretch that out a little bit. This meter here is positioned way down here. So we've got the first meter, that's what we're reading, that's what's coming into this track, this level. So when I go back here and I adjust this, we'll see that it drops down. Okay, so this meter is first in line. It's seeing what's coming into the track. After that, we've added this EQ. Let's turn off the auto gain on the EQ. and watch what happens at this second meter. The second meter, this one here, is the last in the chain. So we got a meter here, we've got some plugins, then we added another meter, that's here, and we can see that after these effects kick in, we're sending out too hot of a signal and it's clipping. So we have a couple things we can do. Let's go to this EQ. Let's put the auto gain back on. Let's turn this fat channel off. Let's put the auto gain on, and we should see that this clipping should disappear. Yes, it does. Because even though we made these radical bumps here, we engaged auto gain and it's leveled it out. So we're coming out of this effect nice and clean. All right, let's close that one. Now let's engage this fat channel. And I've bumped up this gain level here on this fat channel. Guess what? We're peaking like crazy again. We're peaking like crazy because the fat channel is before this gain meter. So what we need to do is adjust what we're doing inside this plugin. Here we go. We dial back the gain in the plugin. Let's go a little more. We can bump it up a little bit. So there we are. We adjusted the gain inside of this plugin. And now we once again have a nice acceptable level coming out. So follow that. I put a meter at the beginning so we could see what's coming in. We did some effects. We adjusted the effects. And now we could see what's coming out. And we're all happy. I know it got a little confusing there, but it's a matter of just following the flow. Let's close all that down. So now what we have, let me get rid of that peak. So let's look at this. Here's what's coming in and going out. And that is being sent over here. And we have a nice solid level. We have our effects applied and we are not clipping. So we layered in that additional layer of gain staging. Got it? That's it. Hey, thanks for sticking with me this far. We're almost done. I'm just about ready to wrap it up. We're going to touch briefly on a couple of last important subjects. It'll only take a couple of minutes, I promise. And we're going to touch briefly on mastering and LUFS. But before we go there, I have to ask you, please, give consideration to subscribing to the channel. It would really help me. And don't forget to check the box to like, ring the bell to get notifications of my next videos. And if you think this is giving you any knowledge that's at all beneficial, hey, consider buying me a coffee. You'll find the link below. Okay, that's it. Now let's wrap this up with a brief touch on mastering and LUFS. Thanks again. Get the free cheat sheet on everything I've covered at captainmoto.com. The link is below. Okay, to wrap this all up, I just want to touch briefly on a couple important subjects, and I'll be going much more in depth in video 3 of this series. I hope to see you there. Thanks. Let's start with the concept of unity gain. In this little snapshot, we see a small mix, and all the faders are set at 0. And that's a good place to be. And there's a lot of reasons for starting at 0. But when the fader is set at 0, what that is telling us is that you are neither increasing or decreasing the volume output for what's on that channel. And because you are not increasing or decreasing, you then are at unity with the original state of the audio coming in. That's why setting your faders at 0 is referred to as unity. So it's a good practice to always have your faders set at 0 or unity when you're beginning a mix. And I'll talk about that in a little more detail as we proceed in the next video. So, when you finish your mix and you're ready to export that final mix into a MP3 or WAV file to be shared, if all you're going to do is share it with your friends, family members, or bandmates, probably the easiest thing to do is just do a mix down and export it there. On the other hand, if the intent of producing this piece of music, this content, is to share it professionally or semi-professionally, just to put it out there on Spotify or YouTube or SoundCloud, Apple Music, what have you, it's important to note that they have certain standards that are required. And then secondly, you may want to consider mastering, because it gives you the opportunity to take the finished track and further enhance it, polish it up, so it meets a higher standard of audio that can compete with the other audio that's out there on the streaming platforms. And one of the ways you compete is to have your song at an appropriate volume level, and mastering is the last stage in the process to increase the volume so that when listeners are hearing a multitude of songs, that your song has equivalent volume level to the other songs they're listening to. You certainly wouldn't want to be listening to music on your streaming service or your radio or what have you, and then when the next song comes in, suddenly it's quieter. Not very good, certainly if it's your song. So mastering is the last chance to bring your volume up to a professional level. And now that we're talking about volume, if you're sending your song out to any of the streaming services or YouTube or anywhere, they are going to have a loudness standard referred to as LUFS, LUFS. And it's important to understand that whether you do it yourself or have a mastering engineer do it, or you use the software to do it, one way or the other, your song is going to be adjusted to meet the appropriate LUFS level for that streaming service. And LUFS is an abbreviation for Loudness Units Full Scale. And that came about when the government stepped in to try to manage wide swings of volume. Example, you're watching TV, you've got your favorite show on, and suddenly a commercial on and it gets a lot louder. It's aggravating. You turn the volume down, the commercial's over, back to your show. Now the volume is down, you have to dial it up. Well, government agencies stopped in to try to standardize that with the LUFS system, and it was implemented first in the EU and then eventually adapted in the US. Now, if you're using Studio One, when you export your file from the mix, it is automatically going to give you the option to have Studio One correct the loudness to meet the standard for the streaming service that your intended audience is, whether that's Spotify or YouTube or what have you. But they all sort of fall within a similar range, and I'll be covering some of that in the next video. Having said that, though, I don't know about you, but it's my preference to understand these parameters and take control of things like loudness myself, rather than have some automated system do that for me. So I'll be covering a little bit of that in the next video as well. And that pretty much brings us to the conclusion. I want to wrap this up with one more thing. When I distribute my music, I use a service called DistroKid. And what I do is I submit my song to them. They then send it out automatically to all of the streaming services, Apple Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. And the nice thing about it is, once they put it out there, If it's an original piece of music, you are owed royalties on it. And when it's streamed, a royalty is generated. If you do nothing to collect your royalty, it will go to a big pot distributed to other folks. But if you take action to recover or claim your royalties, DistroKid will do that for you. And if you have a hit song, you could make some money on it. Typically, the royalties are very small because my guess is, as a not a big recording artist, you're not going to have millions of streams. But whatever royalty is generated, DistroKid will collect it for you. So if you want to use DistroKid, I'm offering you a 7% discount on your annual fee. I think their annual fee now to do this is about $32 or $34 US. So it's not a lot to start with, but you'll get 7% off of that if you use the link that I offer below to get the VIP discount. That's it.